welcome back to another episode of Navigating Endo with Ashley. Episode 5. I'm really excited to talk to you today about my adenomyosis story. Alright, so I'm really excited to be back with you to talk to you today about my adenomyosis journey. So to start off, April is Adenomyosis Awareness Month. Now, before we get any further, first of all, yes, I'm sitting on the floor because it's just easier when I need to get to the floor, do some stretching, as I've said in some previous videos. And secondly, if I pronounce adenomyosis as adenomyosis, I'm just going to apologize now because it's likely going to happen. It's one of those words that I just can't seem to say the same time every... So, let's get the facts out of the way first. You may be very surprised to learn that 1 in 100 women, or 1 in 100 people assigned female at birth, are diagnosed with adenomyosis. And you might find that strange because you're probably thinking, well, I've never even heard of this disease before. And this is why we need to talk about this. Okay, so I want to quickly describe to you my understanding of what adenomyosis is. And then I'll give you an example of how I experience it myself. So what adenomyosis is it's the inner lining of the uterus, or the endometrium, that grows into the muscle walls of the uterus, where it's not supposed to be. Now, it continues to act as normal when it's inside the muscle walls of the uterus, which causes an immense amount of pain and extra bleeding. So basically, just as your body would when it's going through regular period or cycle, it does the same thing while it's inside the uterine walls. So it still thickens and it still sheds, and it causes a crazy amount of pain. Now, just like I said, I'm going to share with you my experience to kind of give you a visual of how it might look for someone, even though all of our experiences are completely different. Alright, so next up I want to talk to you about how I was diagnosed with adenomyosis. So it was kind of by default, I guess I could say. So I was having a crazy amount of pain and I was having a crazy amount of bleeding. And so my doctors were like, well, we don't really know why this is happening. Your period should be stopped completely because of the medications that you're taking. And because they weren't, they're like, okay, well, we're going to do some more investigating and see what's happening here. Now, that didn't sound very promising to me because every time I go for an MRI or an ultrasound, they always come back as normal. They never seem to see anything. So I was like, okay, well, here we go again. So, that being said, I went and had a transvaginal ultrasound done. And once I followed up with my doctor, she looked at the report and she said, okay, so now we know why this extra pain is happening and why all this bleeding is happening. She said, you have adenomyosis. And then she briefly described it to me, just like I described to you in the beginning. And she said, the good news is, at least we can understand what is happening, and now we can try and work towards, giving you proper pain management and adjusting your medications accordingly. Now, that being said, adenomyosis, just like endometriosis, has no cure. And what she did say to me, however, was, well, you might want to think about having a baby and then getting a hysterectomy, which maybe that will help with the pain from the adenomyosis, but that won't help the pain from endometriosis because endometriosis tissue grows outside of the uterus, so it's not going to stop that from happening, even though a lot of doctors will say that a hysterectomy is the be-all, end-all that's going to help you out, but it's not going to. So anyways, I left the hospital and I was crying because I just felt like, okay, another diagnosis for a disease that has no cure. So what do you do when you're feeling this way? For me, I always call my mom. And in this instance, I sent my mom a text message. So after texting my mom, I had to call her, of course, because texting isn't enough when you find out that you have another disease that's going to cause you more pain, and it still has no answers because there's no cure for either endo or adeno. So I made my way home, sat on the couch, and just had a little cry to myself because it's so frustrating learning things about yourself that you can't do to fix, and doctors can't fix it either because there is no cure. That being said, what I did do that was super helpful was I jumped onto one of my endometriosis support groups. Now, I know that we're having a conversation about adenomyosis, but endometriosis and adenomyosis often go hand in hand, and it's always helpful to speak to someone directly who's experiencing exactly what you're experiencing, or maybe they have in the past and they have some tips or tricks to help you navigate the process, or what you might be able to discuss with your doctor at your next appointment. So I definitely highly recommend joining a support group if you haven't already. And of course, as always, I'll leave you some links in my description. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And I look forward to talking to you guys again next week.